Do you have any idea how capitalism has completely changed the world? Then let's find out how it's a part of our everyday life. Hey guys, welcome back to another informative video by our channel. Today, we will be showing you how capitalism works. But before we make you a more knowledgeable person, you know you have to do it. So subscribe to our economics YouTube channel and hit the bell icon, as I'm sure you don't want to miss out on any of our videos. Now, let's get to it. Why not start with the basics? Let's start with what the term capitalism actually stands for. It's not as complicated as it sounds. Capitalism can be described as the business system in which a country's trade, industry, and profits are managed by private corporations, instead of by people whose time and labor powers those companies. The United States and many other countries around the world are termed capitalist countries. But why? Younger Americans particularly are doubting long-held assumptions about the way our economy operates. With climate change being picturized as a grave threat to our future, millions living below the poverty line, the economic and social blows of the coronavirus pandemic and unemployment wave still reflecting, and the richest 1% banking ever more wealth, Gen Z and millennials say they've grown frequently disillusioned with capitalism. But it's necessary to examine what capitalism entails and the arguments for and against it, so you can make your own decisions about the world you'd like to live in. To understand how it works, we need to know where capitalism comes from. The foundations of capitalism stretch back to the 16th century, when the British systems of authority considerably collapsed after the Black Death. This virulent plague killed off up to 60% of Europe's entire population. A newly set class of merchants began to trade with international countries. This newfound demand for exports wreck local economies and begin to control the overall production and pricing of goods. It also directed to the extent of colonialism, slavery, and imperialism. What added to this was the death of feudalism. This system is often seen as confining that kept poor people connected to their master's land, which they worked in exchange for a place to live and military assurance. Also, it left rural British laborers with no homes and no work, which finally funneled them away from the countryside and into urban centers. These former farm workers then had to trade their labor in a newly competitive work environment to sustain. At the same time, the state worked in concert with the new capitalists to stabilize a maximum wage and clamp down on beggars. By the 18th century, England had turned into an industrial nation, and the dawn of the Industrial Revolution saw an explosion of manufacturing overtake the island. It is within those grimy factories and combustible textile mills that our modern idea of capitalism and the opposition to it began to thrive fully. In 1776, Scottish economist Adam Smith issued his treatise, An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations, which is viewed as the bedrock upon which contemporary capitalism stands. Though some of his definite ideas about the value in labor vary from those of modern economists, Smith is often called the father of capitalism. What does it mean to be capitalist? Individual capitalists are typically wealthy persons who have a large amount of capital funding in the business and serve from capitalism by making elevated profits and thereby adding to their money. The free market controls a capitalist country, an economic system in which both prices and generation are recorded by corporations and private businesses in competition with one another. It puts a massive focus on private property, economic extension, freedom of choice, and restricted government intervention. Generally, those to the right of the political spectrum tend to be pro-capitalist. Those to the left veer nearer to anti-capitalism. But how does capitalism affect ordinary people? The impact that capitalism has on your life depends on whether you're a worker or a boss. For someone who has a company and hires out other workers, capitalism may make sense. The more value your company brings in, the more resources you have to dispense among your men, which improves everyone's standard of living. However, it's all based on the principle of supply and demand. And in capitalism, consumption is the boss in power. The dilemma is that many capitalist bosses aren't exceptional at sharing the wealth. Hence, one of the primary critiques of capitalism is that it is a huge driver of variation, both social and economic. Capitalism takes the belief that greed is good, which its supporters say is a positive thing. Greed drives profits. Profits drive discovery and product development, which means more opportunities are available for those who can afford them. Its antagonists say that capitalism is, by nature, exploitative and heads toward a fiercely divided society that tramples the working class in favor of expanding the rich's wallets. The Occupy Wall Street movement, for example, began as an anti-capitalist protest against the 1%, the richest of the rich of the capitalist class, and asked why they're permitted to become fat and happy. In comparison, 20% of all American kids experience poverty. Fact check. In 1820, 94% of the world's population was living in extreme poverty. By 2015, only 9.6% of the world's population was living in extreme poverty. In the past 250 years, there has been an unprecedented rise in global living standards. The capitalist revolution made the escape from poverty possible. It brought about advances in technology, increasing specialization, and massive increases in productive assets. Between 1990 and 2015 alone, 1.25 billion people around the world escaped extreme poverty, 50 million per year, and 138,000 every day. Why do people support capitalism? Capitalism's followers understand several key points that make them stand with capitalism. The first one is that economic freedom guides political freedom, and having a state-owned median of production can lead to central overreach and authoritarianism. Second, they see it as the only reasonable way to organize a society, declaring that alternatives like socialism, communism, or anarchism are only meant for failure. As former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, whose pro-capitalism position is said to have destroyed the British working class, once put it, there is no alternative. When charged to examine capitalism's negative impact on the environment and our depleting natural resources, many say that those sources will only become more relevant and make more capital as they continue to wane. They also consider that the competition between companies helps consumers by making products more affordable. Capitalism's dog-eat-dog atmosphere supports people to work harder to achieve their dreams. They're likely to bounce anti-capitalist concerns about biases and oppression by saying that rich people are rich because they're more productive than their poorer equivalents. Arranging the central point on the individual rather than the cooperative is a classic symbol of capitalism and is at the core of the pull yourself up by your bootstraps narrative that capitalists find convincing. Capitalism, meanwhile, is in the best products for commencing prices because consumers will spend more for what they want the most. Companies render what consumers want at the highest prices they'll pay, and prices are kept low by competing among businesses. They make their goods as efficiently as possible to maximize profit. Most important for economic growth is capitalism's inherent reward for innovation, consisting of new products and more dynamic production methods. However, it does have some disadvantages too. To keep society functioning, capitalism demands management policies that value the family unit. Notwithstanding the idea of a level playing field, capitalism does not promote equality of opportunity. Those away from good nutrition, support, and learning may never make it to the active field. Society will never profit from their valuable skills. In the brief term, inequality may seem to be in the best concern of capitalism's winners. For example, they will distribute to elected officials who promote laws that benefit their industries. They could send their kids to private schools while promoting lower taxes for public schools. One of the most notable examples of capitalism is the United States. It absorbs its ranking on 9 variables, including a lack of corruption, moderate debt levels, and security of property rights. Well, this is what capitalism is, how it works, and how it impacts people. I hope you found this video interesting. If yes, give it a big thumbs up, smash that red subscribe button, and stay tuned for more videos that will satisfy your hunger for economic knowledge.